And Mr. Swaby, if you're back in operation, we're going to continue on here. So I'll start again from the top. Welcome to the Shaw Auditorium for Monday, 2014, October 27th. And we'll call the regular meeting of Council to order. And Mr. Ferrero, if you'd like to introduce the late items, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're going to add the delegation from Mr. Sasha Angus to item 5A. We're going to add delegation from Mr. Mike Horn to item 8E. We're going to add also another delegation from Mr. Mike Horn to item 14A. And we're also adding a delegation from Mr. Lloyd Sherry to item 8B. That's it, Your Worship.
Okay. All right. If we could get a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended. Councillor Brennan, I'm sorry.
Your Worship, I was hoping we could move the Councillor Bestwick's notice of motion about roosters up in front of the Modern Cafe one, because then we can have a consistent approach to the two applications.
Okay, so we'll hear 14A first, and then the other property. Mr. Ferrero, do you have that information already?
Yeah, Your Worship. What we do is we put it under just before 8E.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remind you when we get there.
Alrighty. So, okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Thanks, Councillor Brennan. Okay, we'll move back to the. We had the motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended, and now we'll motion for the adoption of the minutes.
So moved, Your Worship.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move straight down into the presentation. The first one under 5A, Mr. Sasha Angus, Chief Executive Officer, Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, NEDC, to provide an economic update and an NEDC quarterly activity report. And I see you're accompanied by Mr. A.J. Hustins, the President. Mr. Hustins.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Chair of the NEDC, I just wanted to take a minute and introduce Sasha Angus. Just to repeat the mission for Your Worship and Council, the mission of the NEDC is to build a prosperous community through economic opportunity. And we made a commitment some time ago as a board that we would do a quarterly update. And so in discussion with Ted a few days ago, we decided, and the Mayor, that it was time we did that. So we're pleased to be on the agenda tonight. I just want to say on behalf of the board how pleased we are with the CEO and the staff's work in my tenure there, and look forward to hearing what Sasha has to say about the NEDC's accomplishments as well as the recent trade mission to China. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Angus.
Your Worship, members of Council, thank you again for the opportunity to give you a quick update on some of our recent activities. If you look to the displays, there we go. Just a quick update. One of the investments that we've helped bring to the community over the last year and a half has been Tilray, which has been a great corporate citizen for this region of Nanaimo. They're up over $25 million in capital investment into the community and over 80 jobs. And in speaking with them, they have plans to expand their footprint as well. So we're very encouraged by their investment in the community, and we've been doing a lot to make sure that they can get the workers that they need and the products and services that they need as well from local suppliers. And so that's been a great piece. In late June, we helped launch the Viva Fund, which is the Vancouver Island Venture Acceleration Fund. This is a private sector venture capital fund that's going to help our local small, medium-sized businesses with the money that they need to continue to expand. And so this is a private sector operation that we've been providing some logistical support to, because it's important to Nanaimo businesses to make sure that they have the capital to expand in place, that we don't lose them to places like Vancouver or farther afield. When they get venture capital from other places, the boardrooms tend to move. And so we want to make sure that they have opportunities to stay here and grow. Island Ferries, we've been working very closely with the city and the proponents. About a month ago, we helped put together an online letter to help show other orders of government the support that it has in the community. That's received over 1,400 letters of support from everywhere from Victoria all the way up to Campbell River and everywhere in between. And so I think it really shows the benefit that the whole entire island sees is for Island Ferries and what sort of economic stimulus will provide to not only our community but Central Vancouver Island hopefully over the months and years to come. Town Square we launched at the end of July. This is an online platform for small and medium-sized businesses in the Nanaimo area. You have to be a local business to be able to get onto it. And it was really to help expand the platform for us to provide mentoring services and peer mentoring between businesses across the region. And so we've seen the fastest adoption rate of anywhere in North America. We're the first community in Canada to have it, the first community outside the United States. And so it's been a wonderful new platform for local businesses to be able to create new business development opportunities, to speak to each other, to say, I've got an issue about exporting to the United States. Typically, there's other businesses that may have encountered those same challenges, and they're able to provide information and help those businesses grow on a virtual platform where you don't have to show up at a certain time and a certain date in a certain room to get the services that you need. We're working very closely with Vancouver Island University for a business plan competition that's going to be held later in November. We think this is a wonderful opportunity to engage bright young minds, to become entrepreneurs, and to look at how we create the next generation of business owners in the community. Square One launch, at the end of July we launched Square One, and so we've brought on 7 businesses through Square One over the last 4 months, and we continue to welcome new businesses into the space pretty much every week. We've been working very closely with staff as well as stakeholders for sport tourism strategy as well as a business plan, in addition to an economic impact study for the sports industry in the region. We've just had community consultations over the past couple of weeks, and so we look forward to having both of those documents hopefully in place by the end of this year. And so, again, a wonderful opportunity to continue to grow something that is a significant economic generator to the region. Lastly, and I'm sure we'll get the update, the accommodation tax. We've been working very closely with the Hospitality Association and other partners to look at the implementation of how we grow our tourism sector through that new revenue source. Business in Nanaimo, you've got on your desks. That's the latest version. It was done for, it was paid for by its advertising, which is great to see as a cost recovery measure. So 25,000 copies are going into the Lower Mainland, Edmonton, Calgary businesses there to really showcase Nanaimo as a place to do business as well. What we found over the last year with the first edition is that local businesses are using it as a talent attraction tool. So if they're coming to Nanaimo for a specific job opportunity, it allows them to get a really good picture of what our local community is about, not only from a business perspective, but from a quality of life perspective. And so a lot of the businesses, particularly in the technology sector, that are trying to attract folks to come work here, have found it a great tool to do exactly that. Our economic gardening project, we helped 6 businesses over the course of the pilot over the past year. It's been a remarkable success as far as the value that the businesses got. That was a matching dollar initiative where the businesses had to put up 50 cents and we would put up the other 50 cents to a maximum of about $1,500 in order to get very strategic advice from Community Futures and other business analysts on how to grow their business. It's been a remarkable success that way. Economic indicators, we're just finishing up the last of this year's updates for the economic indicators that we first did last year, and so look forward to sharing that with you in the coming weeks. That is a picture of Colin Dobell, who's the CEO of Inuktun. He is one of the companies that we featured in a marketing campaign earlier this year, which has gone very well. We put it into the Victorian marketplace, and I can tell you almost immediately the response from the Victorian marketplace, which was part of the intention. It was really to raise Nanaimo again, particularly in our in-markets like Victoria and Vancouver, to really raise awareness about how we are as a place to do business and the types of companies that we do have in the community. As I mentioned, that's the new on the left-hand side. That's the new cover of our Business in Nanaimo magazine. Gentleman, Mr. Go, is the new owner of Pacific Rim Bicycles. And we've seen a significant increase in the number of newcomers to the community who have invested and bought local businesses over the past 12 months. And so that's a trend that we will likely see over the next 2 or 3 years. Our visitor guide for the region, we're very happy to see significant occupancy rates for our hotel properties, as well as a significant increase of the visitors at our Visitor Information Center over the June-July months and into August as well. We had a couple pieces that are always interesting. Yahoo Travel does a food trail, and so while we may take it for granted, the Nanaimo Bar Trail is something that actually people come and will go out of their way to experience. And so we're the only Canadian destination as part of their Food Bloggers Trail to be listed on Yahoo Travel. We had a great campaign with hashtag Explore Nanaimo during the course just before the Summer Games and just after. We had opportunities for locals as well as visitors to talk about what it is they love about our community, the experiences that they had here. And as important, we had Explore Nanaimo offers. And so for free, local businesses could provide discounts through the website as long as they hashtagged it with the Explore Nanaimo offers to be able to attract newcomers to their businesses and offer deals on meals, a whole host of different activities for our local businesses to take advantage of the folks that were visiting our community. We had a University Town feature in WestJet that we helped contribute along with VIU, so that was a great piece. And we were very happy that the port was able to land the Helijet business starting in December. We started about 11 months ago helping with the business case to put that together. So worked very closely with Helijet as well as their consultants to help make the business case for Nanaimo. And so we're happy that that service will be up and going in a few months, or I guess a few weeks from now. We're providing a new map format for our visitor guide. It was a direction that we've received from not only our stakeholders, but our Tourism Leadership Committee as well. And that's really to make Nanaimo the base camp for everybody's activities on Vancouver Island. So they can stay here and they can venture out and go throughout our region. And mapping is one of the things that we saw the most out of our Visitor Information Center, as well as other communities as well. And lastly, we're working with SSS Manhao Group for a Chinese fam tour in the November timeframe. These were, at the moment, it's around 20 individuals who are in the travel trade business to come over to the community. So we're working on draft itineraries and different opportunities for them to experience, both in the summer months as well as the winter months. And so we're hopeful to have that locked up in the coming weeks. One of the pieces that we've worked on over this past year, and it's been a very collaborative effort with Vancouver Island University, the Port Authority, Airport Authority, ourselves, as well as the Chamber of Commerce in the city, is around the concept of Team Nanaimo. And so we first used the concept around LNG opportunities. Obviously, the province has a heavy investment into the future of LNG in the province. And actually, when you put together the assets of our community, we actually provide a very good solution to a lot of the businesses that are going to be putting together those mega projects in northern BC. Whether it's logistics and having a deep water port and be able to stage those investments up into the north from Nanaimo, or if it's the airport and being able to get workers into those camps and into those projects, we've got a wonderful opportunity to take advantage from a local perspective. And so we hosted the Parliamentary Secretary for LNG last Friday. He talked about some of the pieces that the province is doing. And so there's going to be a session in the January timeframe for local businesses so they can figure out practically how do they engage into these opportunities and what types of opportunities are available to them. The second discussion that we have been having over the past few months is around economic infrastructure. And so as we look to grow our local economy, what are the projects that will help not only bring near-term economic activity, but also increase our economic capacity as a region over the years to come? And so we've had some great discussions with VIU, the port, and others around what those kind of projects would be and how we come together to support them as a community. As was mentioned, we recently returned from China. We were there for 10 days, a small but steady band of us heading over. We did 25 meetings in 10 days, so it was fast and furious. I can say that we've already had great feedback as far as the investor groups and businesses that we met with. They were at a scale that talks in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And so glad to report, and unfortunately we're under a bit of a non-disclosure agreement, but we've got a draft letter of intent that arrived this morning from one of the groups. And so this is obviously a marketplace that we've seen a lot of activity from in the past 18 months that will likely continue in the years to come. And so it's something that we want to help foster and support and develop partnerships where not only we can attract investment to our community, but a large number of local businesses are exporting into the Chinese marketplace, and that trend will also likely continue. And so to be able to find sister organizations and create partnerships and bridges between our local business community as well as the business community in certain parts of China is going to be a huge asset, not only for the businesses that are doing pretty significant numbers there now, but for the businesses to come as well. This is just a quick illustration. Mr. Bai, who is the gentleman with the red tie on the left, these are the types of relationships where meeting face-to-face is important. And so we're not going to be there monthly, but we would likely lead a delegation back to China sometime in the new year to follow up on these business opportunities. And we think there's significant opportunities, particularly around bringing awareness to the Nanaimo marketplace in China. There's a conference called Baobao, which is the equivalent of the World Economic Forum in China. 2,000 of China's best and brightest business leaders get together. And because of one of the relationships we developed, we're looking at an opportunity to have a Nanaimo roundtable at that session, which would be a home run as far as the awareness of Nanaimo as an investment destination, as a place to do business in North America. This is a picture of us with the Suzhou Chamber of Commerce. It's a small chamber of commerce. It's only 76,000 members. So a wonderful opportunity, again, for us to develop the relationship through SSS Manhao and broaden that. We had an agreement that was reached with our Chamber of Commerce and the Suzhou Commerce Association of Canada earlier this year. And so there will likely be other opportunities between ourselves, the Chamber, as well as their Tourism Bureau and their Commerce Department as well. And so we look forward to pursuing those. This is in Suzhou, a portion of the Manhao Project's office space in downtown Suzhou that's been dedicated to economic development and tourism. And so we've got all of our collateral and brochures there for investors, not only directly related with the project, but other investors as well. So we've been getting decent feedback from that, and I think there'll be some other investor groups that come through the community, hopefully early in the new year. This is Guilin. Guilin, again, is a small tourism community. They only receive about 34 million visitors a year, so just a small number, roughly the population of Canada. They have a strong interest, and thankfully the timing was impeccable. The week before we left, they had a delegation, including the head of their Foreign Affairs Office, the head of their Tourism Bureau, as well as their Commerce Department in Nanaimo to sign a Friendship City Agreement. So not quite the same as a sister city with different responsibilities, but a wonderful opportunity not only to look at tourism and to co-brand Guilin, which is a tourism mecca in China, and Nanaimo in the same breadth, but also talk about education. Education is one of the pieces internationally, and VIU has been doing a very good job of increasing their international student population that has tremendous potential, and Guilin seems to have a strong appetite to continue those discussions with our academic institutions here. Just a few points, I guess, and it's some of the things that we take for granted. Obviously, the past 25 years, there's been a significant buildup of wealth in China. They've now eclipsed the United States as the world's single largest economy. And so as Canadians, where we had traditionally relied on the Americans for our sources of capital, for our loans, and for other business activities, this is a market that we need to pay attention to. And so they look at it as an opportunity to diversify. Obviously, a lot of them have made significant money in their marketplace. They're looking globally now as far as how they continue to diversify. They see us as not only a stable country and one that has good regulatory environments, but also beautiful and clean. When we were there, and it wasn't too bad, the air quality index was about 175 on their index. 225 is when they don't let senior citizens or children go out and breathe the air. And so when we look at Nanaimo as a place where we have great quality of life, a natural environment that's incredible, it's obviously something that's attractive to a global market. And as we continue to grow as a community in the coming years with our demographics, it's an opportunity to welcome newcomers to the community who want to contribute both socially and economically. And again, I just mentioned education. It came up second only to shopping as one of the activities that Chinese love to do when they're traveling. And so we put together a pilot program over the last 6 months with the Downtown Business Association as well as Central Vancouver Island Literacy to help start training some of our local businesses around how you welcome Chinese guests, Chinese customers, a little bit into the merchandising and what they might want to think about. Oops. Is that me or you? Sorry. And so we've gotten great feedback. It was a pilot because we wanted to make sure we had the curriculum right. And so that's something that we're going to be doing next year as well, to be able to provide information to our local businesses on how to take advantage of this new tourism market. As far as an economic update goes, I mentioned we'll be releasing the full economic indicators in the coming weeks. but wanted to give you just a few snippets, I guess. Our regional economy, we for the very first time last year knew how big it was, and at that time it was $3.86 billion. It's grown over the past about 14 months, and so right now it's estimated at the end of 2013 at about $3.955 billion. There's a very good chance over the course of this year that we've crossed over the $4 billion threshold, which is fantastic. For a community our size and a population base, we are remarkably productive. That's higher per capita than Victoria, it's higher than the Lower Mainland, and it's better than a lot of communities in Canada. And so thankfully we have a very productive workforce that have great education rates, great educational achievement, and that's something that we want to continue to foster in the years to come. Our share of business and corporations, as you can see, we've more or less been holding our own for the last 14 years as far as the percentage of business and corporations as a total of as a percentage of the province. That number it's interesting, but as interesting is the types of businesses that we've started to form, particularly over the last 2 years. We've seen a significant rise, about 48% increase in the number of professional, scientific, and technical service businesses. So these are knowledge-based, typically businesses where their median pay is significantly better than our median household income. And for example, the tech sector, if you're a web developer or a software coder, you're earning about $65,000 a year. That's about $9,000 higher than our median household income now. And so every job that we can create in that sector is like adding an additional household's worth of demand into the marketplace. Eating at restaurants, shopping in stores, doing all the things that we do in our normal course of our lives. It was interesting talking to the folks at LNG. They were touring northern BC, and the gentleman said he's kind of new, so he's not earning much. He's only earning $45,000. And they said, "Oh, $45,000 a year?" He goes, "No, $45 an hour." And so again, these are the sectors that we want to look at as far as providing household-sustaining jobs for the citizens of our region. Knowledge-based industries, as I mentioned, we've been more than keeping pace with the province. So even as Vancouver and Victoria progress as technology hubs, we're the fourth largest technology hub in the province. We've been holding our own, which is great. Oops, sorry, that was the last one. The final slide. And so, again, a host of activities on behalf of the NADC, and thank you for the members of the board that are here tonight for their support. We're going through our planning processes for 2015 right now. The board met at the end of September to talk about priorities, and so we're, as staff, putting together those actions and the things that we feel will provide value for the community and for our shareholder, and look forward to providing you that as soon as the board ratifies it, if planned in November. So I want to say thank you again for your time, hopefully not taking too much of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Angus. That was very interesting indeed. And, you know, I was going to mention that I think I did advise you and possibly to Mr. Hussins that I had sent out something like 25 letters of request to the mayors and some of the regional chairs, regional district chairs around here. And so just in the last few days, actually, and today we've got a letter from the city of Langford and one from Parksville, both supporting island ferries. So we're hoping more and more letters will come through in the days to come. So it's a great project which we certainly support. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Angus, very much. I have a question about Tilray on Duke Point.
Sure.
A week ago, the representatives came with their expansion plans, and the floor space is going to be about triple what we have now. And I tried to find out how many extra jobs would come with that, and I didn't have the answer. Do you?
I have a rough answer, which is their footprint will likely triple, and I know we've been talking about virtually doubling their presence here from an employment standpoint, if not a little bit higher. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's one of the businesses where it's a people business, it's a hands-on business, and so I know we've been working with them twice now for career fairs and other job opportunities in the Nanaimo region, and so I think that's something that they'll continue to do in the new year as well.
Yeah, they did indicate that there might be more automation than is presently happening in the original building, but so if you say double, then that's good.
It's, again, not to speak and put words in their mouth, but you'll be close.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I might just quickly add, if I can, Councillor Batchy, that Tilray has proven to be an excellent corporate citizen here in Nanaimo. Right from the very beginning, they indicated that they were quite prepared to pay taxes. They weren't going to apply in that loophole that existed previously, whereby they could apply for farm status and be exempt most of their taxes. They stood up and said, we're going to be there for you, we're going to pay our way, and we really appreciate that. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Angus. I'm looking forward to the completion and release of the sport impact study as much as we can anticipate that. I'm looking forward to that as you said before the end of the year, a Christmas present?
It'll be, yes, we'll put a bow on it for sure.
Awesome. Of course, I have to ask a question on page 22, 23 of your guide. It makes reference to the building is set to begin on long-awaited conference center hotel. I have to assume that part of your mission was to discuss the hotel's future.
Right.
Could you provide us with any update on when the construction may commence?
Sure. I actually have a meeting later this week with their logistics team just to talk about what that looks like. So happy to provide an update. When we met with them in China, they were going through their plans to begin construction. Again, I wouldn't want to put words in their mouth, but imminently was the feedback that we got from themselves and from the rest of the delegation as well.
Thank you. So it's your view that from that trip that the delegation represented by Yunhao Chen is fully prepared to proceed with the hotel that is on the books as we know it?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Angus, for your presentation. Since I've been on council, I've asked you one question over and over and over and over again, and I'm sure you can probably guess what it is, but if you can't, I'm going to ask it to you again. And I was curious, what has the NEDC been doing to ensure that younger people are staying in our community? Because as we see every year, we see people graduating from VIU and they're leaving to go to Victoria and go to Vancouver, or they're going out into the oil sands in Alberta. So I'm just curious, what is the NEDC doing to ensure that younger people are staying in our communities instead of leaving to go to other communities?
Sure. And VIU's business plan, I think, is probably an example of the relationship we've been developing with VIU over the last, since I've been here, so about 2 years now. And so we've, from a staff perspective as well as a board perspective, placed a high priority on talent attraction and talent development here locally. So VIU we deal with on a weekly basis, either talking to their MBA classes or to other programs to help support them. I know at our visitor center, we hire over the summer months graduate or prospective graduates from their tourism programs to work in our visitor information center. And as well at Square One, it's for technology startups, and it's not typically, I want to cast aspersions, but it's not 80-year-olds that are starting technology startups. It's typically people that have just graduated out of university that have a concept or idea. They have a bit of passion around creating a new company. And so Square One is designed specifically to provide them with an affordable space that we can surround them with the mentoring services that they need to create new businesses. And again, there's been a host of pieces. The other piece is around awareness. And so we talk to about twice a month now, I guess, various students that are looking for internships or other opportunities, and we connect them with resources in the community so they can stay here and hopefully pursue job opportunities here as well.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up to that as well, I've talked to numerous business owners who have, as you know, the University of Victoria has an engineering program, but a lot of those students who are from Nanaimo who've gone to UVic are doing their co-ops and their internships in Victoria instead of looking at doing it in Nanaimo. So I was just wondering, I know that you've been reaching out to other communities such as Victoria and other parts of British Columbia and across the world. What are you doing to ensure that those people who are going to different universities are coming to Nanaimo instead of choosing those other places as the destination that they're going to choose to live in?
And part of it is getting the information through VIU out to the students because there's, we've made some headway, but there's definitely room for improvement as far as integrating the students coming out of VIU with opportunities in the community. They do have MBA coordinators as well as co-op coordinators at VIU that we spend a lot of time with to talk about where potential new co-op opportunities are for the students that are coming out of their programming. Beyond that, it's really, again, pieces around raising awareness about Nanaimo as a place for not only a great quality of life, but for a quality of opportunity as well. We've seen a few pieces, like in the Vancouver Sun, for example. We got pick up in that marketplace with Anukden Services. They were hiring engineering students out of the Lower Mainland that came here and would stay here. And so we wanted to raise awareness about that as well, because while we do have students going to those other markets, we have students coming here as well.
Okay, and perhaps I'll rephrase my question. This will be my last one. But are you targeting other universities other than VIU, I guess is what I was trying to ask, because those people are, for example, VIU doesn't have an engineering program. They go to UVic to finish their program and get their degree. But we have a lot of engineering firms in Nanaimo. So I'm asking, is the NEDC doing anything to contact those universities saying that, you know what, we have opportunities here in Nanaimo, and so your student should be coming here because we have A, B, C, and D?
We haven't yet, but that's a great suggestion. We've been really focusing over the last year and a half with working with VIU to make sure that the students that are here get placed here locally to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Skip, you're off. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Angus, for your update. It's great to hear all of your accomplishments. Just a quick one. Are you partnering at all with the Nanaimo Port Authority to try and help grow the cruise ship industry?
We are beginning that process, yeah. And so we've, for the last, again, 2 years since I've been here, whenever the cruise ships come in, all of our tourism team are on site to give the visitors information about what there is to do in the region. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, we develop all the flat maps and all of the other collateral that comes as part of those visits. And we've been working very closely with the port over the last 6 months in particular, with their cruise consultant, talking about how we make a destination cell for the community and how we integrate better into their business development. So that's something that I know Leslie's been working on very closely with Doug and other members that are their staff at the Port Authority, and I think that's something we'll continue to do as a matter of practice over the months and years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. I see no further questions from council. Thank you very much, Mr. Angus. Very informative indeed, and carry on with the good work. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now, the next delegation. Now, the next presentation is Mr. Toby Seward, Director of Social and Protective Services, to provide an emergency management update. Oh, you're going to sit there? Okay, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. With me tonight is Karen Lindsay, the Emergency Program Manager, and Karen and I are going to give you a quick update on 2 issues and certainly entertain any questions when we're completed. Karen's going to talk about Ebola first, and I'm going to talk about Emergency Coordination Center second. So, Karen.
Alrighty. So first, a few weeks ago, we initiated a planning committee for Ebola, and a lot of that was due to some of the media attention that was occurring worldwide, essentially. Included in that planning committee is BC Ambulance, Provincial Health Infection Control, Fire, Police, and NRGH. And the reason we did that was to prepare, plan, and ensure that any protocols were being followed, as Island Health and BC Ambulance are the lead agencies in health emergency. They've provided us with procedures and continue to provide us with procedures, and I'll highlight a few of the items that they did tell us. First, they keep reiterating that the chances of it are extremely remote. However, having said that, it is still upon us, or falls upon us, to make sure that we prepare irregardless. A set of procedures are being developed by health, as well as training videos for responders. And part of the reason we are doing this planning committee is so that there are no gaps amongst the responders when they do, if they do go on call. In addition, the focus has been put by BC Ambulance on the initial screening at the point of call when they come into 911. So Island Health and BC Ambulance have put some extensive procedures in place to do that initial screening. They are setting up a 4-man team in Vancouver strictly for response should there be a case or a suspected case of Ebola in the community. Our responders wouldn't be going to those calls. It would be strictly this BCAS team that would be going. There are also 5 designated hospitals in the province that will be handling any suspected cases, and the closest one the nearest one to us would be to Victoria. In addition, they've stripped down ambulances that are specific to suspected cases if their responders do go to that. We continue to have those planning committee meetings and sharing information, and it's been very valuable as it's allowed all the different agencies to be really talking and making sure that we're all on the same level of awareness for it, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Karen. We can entertain questions now, or I could do a brief...
Maybe we could do it now, possibly, and save time. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you. Just a question in connection with the BC Ambulance Services. They have changed their coding, so-called, I believe. How does that affect your work, your programming of emergency response? Does it fit in? Does it make it more difficult?
Well, that I would probably have to default to fire on that, because we're looking at the overall planning of it. As far as the procedures for dispatching and how that gets dispatched, that's something that the fire chief I know is talking to them in quite detail about. So I don't know if Toby has any additional information on that, but I think it's more at that level. But the procedures they have in place will ensure that through their questioning they are not going to be dispatching our responders if it's a suspected Ebola case.
Okay, thank you.
I think the point is that the incidence of Ebola is at this time extremely concerning to everyone. But I think Nanaimo hopefully is being proactive, and I want to thank you and your department and your staff and Toby as well for taking the initiative to ensure that the citizens of Nanaimo have the least amount of risk. It's a terrible disease, and hopefully we won't see any evidence of it here, but I guess time will tell. I see no further questions on it. Thank you. So, Toby, do you want to, Mr. Siebert, do you want to continue on with your portion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to talk briefly about our Emergency Coordination Centre, commonly referred to as ECC. It's also referred to as EOC, Emergency Operations Centre, in other terminology, but they're one and the same. We've held 6 exercises in 2014, and the most recent is around the Great Shakeout, in which we had 2 exercises on an earthquake scenario. The point I wanted to raise is 2 different things have happened. One is that in the 50 participants in those sessions, about 25 each, we've got a total of about 20 new people, because we're adding new people because we have quite a few retirements, and we want to keep train new people as we progress. One of the real challenges with an ECC is that if there's a call, especially at night or on weekends, we don't know who can attend right away, and therefore we want to train up a number of people. So that's one initiative. The second one we're doing is adding other organizations into the ECC. So in this latest round, we had Island Health, Coastal Emergency Communication, which is the ham radio operators, the First Nations through the Intertribal Health, the radio through the WAVE, and lastly, staff component with rapid damage assessment, in which they actually participated in the beginning of the session, then went out to the reception centers, did a mock assessment of those assessment centers, and then reported back in. So our goal, and Karen coordinates this, is to bring more of these agencies into the ECC, so if and when we have emergency of any type, then we can react accordingly. The last thing is Nanaimo resident Doug Backhouse has been in Christchurch for the last couple of years, and he came in and did 2 presentations to a number of staff about the circumstances around what happened in Christchurch, but particularly what their planning is after the fact. Originally, we heard it was a 3 to 7 year program. Doug's saying it's a 20 to 30 year program to rebuild after that earthquake. So it is very valuable to have Doug to come in and do that presentation. So that's what I have to report to you.
Good. Thank you very much. I don't see any questions at this point. I just want to thank staff. Oh, Councillor Kip.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Toby. The Ebola is a neat thing because we have pandemics, very periodic around here, and the training should be similar to it. I'm glad they're doing that. EOC training. How many people in the city have EOC training now, level 1, level 2?
We've got approximately 73 to 75 city staff that have gone through BCERMS, and they have also gone through the online EOC training, level 1 and level 2, and then we've put them through the 6 exercises this year as part of that training.
76
So
people?
yes, we do 3 per position, and that's to build depth in the pool to ensure that if we don't have one that can attend, we can continue fanning out to get those positions filled.
Well, and you can call in mutual aids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, yeah, you've been working with the other areas in your training and your exercising, multi-jurisdictional exercises?
Well, yes, we've had other agencies coming in, and we also have an emergency management agreement, which we're bringing forward later on this evening to talk about some of those initiatives.
So you have had exercises
We
with
haven't had an
RDN,
exercise.
CBRD?
No, we haven't had an exercise with the regional district this year.
Okay, and now rapid damage assessment, post-earthquake evaluation. How many people are now, do you do a level 1, level 2, or do you do like, so for residential or more commercial or building managers and that? Have you separated that out, or do you do?
So what we've developed is a rapid damage program through our building inspection division, and our building inspections have all had the training, and they have been designated. I think we have, and I'm estimating right now, it's about 150 to 200 designated buildings that are primary, secondary, and tertiary for rapid damage assessment that are identified as critical buildings post-seismic in particularly. And they, as part of the exercise that Toby was referring to, they did an assessment of our 2 reception centers, Beban and Bowen. So we have a preliminary analysis of what those buildings look like. So we're hoping to continue on doing that. And then in the new year, we'll be looking at further developing the rapid damage program.
If I can continue, you're pre-planning the buildings then?
Yes, yeah.
And could I carry on further?
Numbers, 200 was it?
100.
Yeah, it was about 150 to 200, and don't quote me, I'd have to look at the list again, but they've been deemed critical, and we worked with Dale Lindsay and the building inspection teams on identifying those buildings.
And if I can, you use the applied technology,
Yes.
ATC 20?
All ATC 20.
Perfect, thank
And
you.
I'd just like to confirm, and our goal is just as you say, is we started with the building inspectors, and this has been on and off back into the days where you were involved. Start with the building inspectors, then local engineers. We have certain areas designated throughout the city which different staff will go to, but the goal over time is to involve people such as building managers and contractors in those areas as well to expand out our RDA program.
All the placards and that are printed now, sitting in bundles waiting?
Yes.
They are.
That's nice to hear. Now, only one thing I want to complain about, when Doug Backos or someone that comes to the community, please invite the council. I'm really disappointed that we don't get invited to any exercises, don't get to know anything. The fire department, police department, public works are 3 of our biggest budgets, and we don't have any democratic oversight in those. So I'd like to be invited to some of that. I'm really disappointed that we don't get invited and don't know about it.
By all means, then we will see if we can, he would put on a session for us. I know he's going back into that area in about 3 months, but his slideshow PowerPoint is very valuable. Thank you.
Good point. I don't see any further questions, so thank you, Mr. Seward and Ms. Lindsay. Very interesting indeed. Moving on to the 8A, the corporate services accommodation tax update, also known as the hotel tax, to the purpose to provide council with an update on the accommodation tax application process and advise of changes to the funded initiatives as recommended by Destination BC. And I think with Mr. Angus still here, we have a resource person we may be able to draw on if there's any additional background we need on this thing. It's just simply a report, and I think we've got an update on it. And actually, I think Mr. Angus spoke on it too. Go ahead.
I'd move that council receive for information the accommodation tax update report.
Okay.
Second,
Second, and Councillor Patchy, were you going
I
to
have,
speak?
I have a
Please.
question
Yeah.
to staff, if I may. Since you're changing number 2 to a range of sport tourism initiatives and so on, how easy or how difficult is it to switch back to the original 3 points when the time comes?
I don't think it will be difficult. I'm not sure, maybe I'm not following the question, but I'm not sure it would be
Well,
difficult.
the question, my concern is that there was the Shenango connection on Newcastle Island to have the funds go that way.
Okay, sorry, Your Worship. There is definitely, from our point of view, it's on a case-by-case business case, of which we think we have a good one once we have the plans in place. The province can't provide any guarantees. Nanaimo First Nations actually believe the risk is very low, or we wouldn't actually endorse proceeding this way. So we believe that it will happen, but there's just no guarantees.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Swaby, I think part of the issue was that initially we had put it in the proposal, and then the government, the provincial government, then had concerns about it this time. So concerns about Newcastle Island and First Nations interests. So it was removed, but there's also a condition in it that immediately it is approved in the modified format that we can go back and introduce our interest. And I totally support seeing the First Nations chance to demonstrate their history on Newcastle Island.
You're correct, Your Worship, and it's merely a technical issue of not having enough detail in the plans for the province, and that will be resolved.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to staff. When can we anticipate the hotel tax becoming a reality? Given the new initiatives or the one that's taken out the First Nation?
Your Worship, assuming that it all goes according to plan, I would say in June? January of 2015.
So like in 2 months?
That's correct.
So even though that there's been a fundamental change to the original application, which included Newcastle Island First Nations sort of marketing plan, then we're still going to be able to proceed with the new plan that's in front of us, or the new initiatives, so to speak?
Your Worship, that is the purpose of the amendment to the bylaw, would remove Newcastle in its current state, and the bylaw would proceed without it now, and the province would approve it, and we'd start collecting based on the bylaw as amended.
Okay.
And if I may, I think the province, am I not correct, Mr. Swaby, that the province has indicated, or we at least indicated to them that it is our intention to bring it back? So they're aware of what we are planning to do?
Totally. Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through you to staff. With regard to the festivals and cultural events, the $169,000 in year one, I hope this does not impact or affect the current cultural grant monies or festival monies.
Your Worship, that would of course be up to council as you consider it in the coming years.
Thank you.
Okay. I see no further questions. Thank you very much. And I think now we'll move into item 8. Oh, sorry, the motion is to just receive for information the accommodation on the tax. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Strategic plan implementation progress. Purpose to provide information on the progress of implementing the corporate strategic plan. And there's a staff recommendation of the motion, the council.
Your Worship?
Yep.
We added the delegation to this item on the agenda. Mr. Lloyd Sherry will be doing a delegation for this item.
Right. So we're just going to mention that the motion is that council receive for information the report on strategic plan implementation. We do have one delegation, Mr. Sherry. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Lloyd Sherry, 3582 Country Club Drive, V9T1T9. My phone number is 250-729-7323. Before I go into my questions that I have as relates to this strategic plan. I would like to ask council, has council in the last term amended or changed the procedure bylaw? Maybe staff can help.
I'm not sure on that one. Is it,
I'm sorry, Your Worship, if the question is if we have amended the procedure
change the
bylaw?
procedure bylaw?
We are in the works to amend or change the procedure bylaw probably in the new council, when new council comes into place. As Council Greaves is aware, we're working on an initiative with the governance committee on changing the procedure bylaw.
And
Okay,
Your Worship,
so-
just
so
to further to
Mike-
that, sorry.
Go ahead. Dan.
Sorry, Mr. Sherry. And staff would be bringing forward some amendments based on what was presented to the committee for council to consider. So that would be a public process for which council would consider that.
So we're following the old council procedure bylaw at this time? Okay, because why I ask is, my understanding when I sat where you people are now, that if there was a motion passed by council directing staff to do something, it was up to staff to follow through and implement. And that hasn't changed, I hope.
Your Worship?
No, it hasn't changed? Is
No,
that-
not that.
Answer's no. Thank you very much. Okay, my bugaboo here this evening, and I'm sorry, but I still have grave concern as to, and it's on your page 31, and it relates to the water and front enhancement, and it's create waterfront interdepartmental staff team and doing this. And you make reference in here as it relates to the property adjacent to the hotel and the utilization for walkways and that in the park as it relates to that area. Now, the question that I have, if you're going to release or lease property to the hotel for walkway and amenities within there, are you going to have to change the zoning in order to accommodate that?
So, Your Worship, just to clarify for Mr. Sherry, he's probably not aware that the Hilton rezoning bylaw is in between third and fourth readings, so it's something we should steer clear of having a discussion about their application. Specifically, we can talk generally about the issue, but not about specifics.
Mr. Swaby, it's not about the hotel. It's the question is the use of the property adjacent, which is currently parked. Now, if we're going to go in there and develop trailways and benches and the likes in there, that has nothing to do with the Hilton going forward or falling back. And all I would like to know, and people have asked me in the community, is there going to be a requirement to rezone that property for, I'll say, hotel use?
Sorry, Your Worship. As Mr. Sherry likely knows, any use of the park in this area will require electoral assent, and council will have to decide whether it's through referendum or through the alternative approval process. And at that time, we certainly would bring forward all of the information that you would need to determine whether it will need a rezoning, what the lease rate would be, how much of the land will be used, all those issues. But we currently don't know at this point until they get through the rezoning and start talking to us about those applications.
But and I lay the cart before the horse here, but the whole thing is that there's are given dates here that there's work been going on, and was council aware of staff and the proponent discussing the utilization of the park for their benefit? And if there was, I haven't seen anything in any report or any publication in the media that there's been discussion going on there.
Your Worship,
there's reference here. There's reference here.
Your Worship, I'm quite uncomfortable with the discussion that's getting so focused on the application before you, and I would really encourage you to stay away from this kind of discussion, or you might put the rezoning in jeopardy that would have to go back to a public hearing.
Mr. Swaby, that's where you and I disagree, okay? And I'm asking the council, okay, because I asked a very important question at the beginning, and I received the answer that I expected, and that's the procedure bylaw. When council directs staff to do something, then staff are required to follow that through, or if they're not happy, they need to bring back a report to council so that that direction can be reconsidered again. Okay? That's where I'm having a problem with, because what I have here, and I'd say not one of the members of council currently have seen this report, okay? And this goes back to August 10th, 1998. And there was a report put forward, okay? And at the end of the report, the council of the day were given options. And they made the option. They received the report. But the crux of it, the whole thing is moved by Councillor Sherry, seconded by Councillor McNabb, that staff be directed to review the removal of zoning designations from park and establish a general statement identifying the uses permitted in the park. Now, have you people received a report contrary to that? Because I haven't seen it on the deal. So what bothers me...
I think, Mr. Sherry, just for one point, I was going to say, my understanding is right from the beginning, when as soon as it became apparent that the developers had an interest in Georgia Park, it's my understanding that senior staff, and I think all of us on council are aware, that electoral assent is required.
But see, Mr. Chairman, part of the problem here is, okay, we want to promote business in town, okay? And I'm not disputing that. When direction has been given, okay, which is contrary to what they would like to do, then a report should have been presented and come back to council for council's consideration of reviewing that, okay? And to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't happened, okay? Because in here, there's a report going to Parks and Recreation on this issue in November, okay? So the thing is, it has, I would have thought, I guess I expected too much. I would have thought that prior to any of this stuff going on, the Parks and Recreation would have had a report with a report back to the council with recommendations one way or the other. So I didn't find out about the utilization of any Georgia Park or anything like that. I go to an open house downstairs, and here you see pretty pictures with all this stuff on. Okay? I question, what did the council in 1998 do? And what did the council after that, when we start reviewing all the parks and everything like that, and take it to a referendum? To me, what's before you in that section, as it relates to that property, or any park property that's designated through bylaw, okay? Shouldn't even be on the table. So I'm sorry. And to leave you on a happy note, I read the agenda this morning, and I put in for a late delegation. The first time it didn't take. I think I know what the mistake was. When you put your email address on forms, make sure you put the complete email address or not. But I felt okay, because I applied to be a late delegation to a report that's not supposed to be presented until the 29th, and today's the 27th. So I had a little jab.
Well, you still got 11 minutes out of it, so that's not bad.
Okay, so
thank you.
That's where I'm coming from. You got a procedure bylaw, let's follow it, okay? Because within your term, you give staff direction to do something, and they haven't followed through. Okay, I'm still waiting for a phone call. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sherry. Oh, Councillor Patchy, do you have a question?
No question to staff.
Okay.
So do you want to move to accept the delegation first before the second?
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
To
staff?
Mr. Swaby, if I may, can you, in a generic way, talk about what former Councillor Sherry is talking about?
Well, Your Worship, in a very general, high-level sense, I think Council needs to remember that you set the rules, you tell staff what to do until you tell staff to do something different. So regardless of what you may have set, whether it's that you have a parkland or whatever zoning, you can consider changing it because you're council. This application actually proposes something different than the parks zoning was envisioned to have, and it's up to council to adjudicate that because it's your bylaw and it's your policies. There was direction in the strategic plan, I believe, and Mr. Lindsay can speak to this better detail than me, and council did direct us to spend some money and look at amendments to this part of the park and adjacent to the walkway, and then along came this rezoning application, of course, for council to adjudicate on.
Just one follow-up, if I may.
Okay, and I have one too.
But the work that former Councillor Sherry referred to in 1998, how would I or anybody else on this council be aware that that is something that's on the books and that we might have to change?
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's talking about the park zoning that was put in place. Yeah. And we're all aware of the park zoning. Everyone's aware of what it takes to use parkland, and that it takes a process that would involve electoral assent. And that's what I'm talking about. Council set those rules to make it very difficult to use parks in Nanaimo for anything except for what parks permits. But in the event council does want to use it for something different, there's a process that's legally in place that the province provides for you to get electoral assent and decide whether it makes sense or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to Mr. Swaby. You mentioned just now in your explanation that when council allocated funds to work on changes or improvements or otherwise to Georgia Park, could you please refresh my memory when we voted or to allocate funds?
Mr. Hickey?
Maritan, in answer to that, right now we are on a process that we're running through the Maffeo Sutton Park plan. That plan has been taken to public information session, is going to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then forwarded to council. But there's no actual dollars allocated for park development until that plan gets approved.
Then, thank you. So I misunderstood then the previous explanation. I understand that we have a Maffeo Sutton plan that has been put on hold per se, but I don't recall voting and or approving allocating funds or monies for the express purpose or intent of improvements to Georgia Park specific or adjacent to the Hilton site, or what the topic of conversation that has prompted this discussion. So I don't remember approving any money.
Your Worship, now I understand Councillor Bestick's question. And without getting into too much detail, it was part of the rezoning report in which Council authorized proceeding with the rezoning that authorized that if it's successful, there would be monies allocated from the developer to go towards park improvements adjacent to the hotel on our property.
Okay, so that's a completely different response to the previous statement that was made about council allocating funds, which wouldn't have been 6 or 8 or 10 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago when we were dealing with the rezoning. My understanding would be then that we allocated, based on this previous statement that you made, that we allocated monies for this express and specific purpose of improvements to the property connected to the Hilton, which is Georgia Park. That's what I heard you say. If I heard that incorrectly, then I stand corrected. Thank you.
Yeah, Your Worship, Council did allocate, if the rezoning is successful, that there would be monies applied to this property.
No. So I understand that, but that's not what the explanation was that came out of the question from Councillor Patchy. And so I'm looking for clarification on that response, which I know that we have approved monies should the rezoning proceed accordingly for improvements. I get that. This conversation, as it relates to the questions of Councillor Patchy that you responded to, is not connected. We can watch it together on
Councillor Kip.
No, Your Worship, just maybe I did confuse it, and I'm trying to clarify it. Where Council authorized money, this is the clarification, is through the rezoning. If the rezoning is successful, the developer will provide some money that we would cost share on improvements to the park in front of the Hilton Hotel.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through to staff, Mr. Swaby, did we not spend some $40,000 there prior to all of this going to public hearing and everything, city money for improvements at the Hilton?
Yes, we've actually expended money for this part of the walkway and for Swilana Park itself.
So we did expend that money. And Georgia Park hasn't really been dragged into the Maffeo-Sutton plan too often, has it? Like when we did the $3 million change down there, nothing was done at that park. When we put all the bricks and everything in, we really didn't do anything. And if I can, I think it shows in our budget some $25,000 a year going to that park for maintenance. Can I have that explanation of what that is?
Your Worship, the budget that we always foresee, it's a crossover between line items like you're referring to and PILTS money that the port provides us, that we would implement these kinds of expenditures, which would be a decision of council at the time that we do it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. So it's been moved. So if somebody, I thought how Councillor Patchy had moved that, but in any event, we're going to be dealing with the 8B now, and so the motion there, if somebody, I thought it had been made, but it may be not, so if someone would like to move the motion that we received for information, the report pertaining to strategic plan implementation.
So moved, Your Worship.
Second. All those, Councillor Patchy, are you on again?
Well, yes, if I
Go ahead.
may ask Ms. Hartley to maybe give a small synopsis as to where we're at for the audience here, for the people at home, how far we are off or on schedule, and in a short way.
Worship, there are 27 initiatives listed on here. 18 of those items are either completed or are on target. And there's 9 items that are marked as delayed. But the ones that are marked as delayed, in many cases, are actually proceeding just actually after September 30th. So, for example, Ms. Samborski has a report on next, which talks about progress on one of the items which was listed as delayed. So even those that are delayed are making progress, just didn't make it in time for the September 30th cut, so to speak.
And follow-up? With regards to the third portion of the governance review, where are we going with that? And when will we get to deal with that?
Your Worship, the Chair may wish to speak to the governance review.
Actually, it is, yeah.
Your Worship, well, he's, from staff's point of view, and the chair can help confirm this, we believe that we got to a point where we needed to actually wait and have the new council in place to actually continue talking about the governance issues. And sorry, wait.
Good enough for me.
Okay. Councilor Graves, is it good enough for you too? Okay.
Good enough for me. Oops, sorry.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're going to see the community benefit sector of it, and the purpose is to provide information on the progress of implementing the corporate strategic plan. If someone would like to move 8C. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're going down into D, operating results for the period ending 2014 September 30th. The purpose is to present a summary of the operating results for the period ending that date, September 30th, 2014. If somebody would like to move that in the absence of the staff report. Move. Looks pretty good football, actually.
Operating results for the period ending 30 September 2014.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconder. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're moving into item E, but I think before that we'll move in Councillor Beswick's motion. I understand it's been brought forward now, so the item now in here is 14A, dealing with Rooster's Restaurant. And so I think now it would be appropriate to turn over to Councillor Beswick to...
We have a delegation.
But it's one to get it introduced, and we'll get the delegation down.
Yes, Your Worship, you may want to hear the delegation first, and then you can move the reconsideration.
Okay. I didn't know if you want to deal anything with the fact that this is a reconsideration request, that was all. But we'll assume that it is. So the first delegation we have is Mr. Mike Horn. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Horn. My address is 450 Vancouver Avenue. You may remember that I spoke to this issue when it was first arose, and I wish to come to speak to this issue in the Moderns application as well. So I guess I'll be up here in a moment again. In the previous discussion, there were several objections and several discussion points made about this sort of application, expanding and enlarging liquor licenses, and the effect it would have on downtown, the effect it would have on the business environment, and I listened to all that with great interest. Many of you predicted that the Modern Cafe would quickly follow with an application of their own, and these predictions have come true. But I see no problem with that. On balance, the other merchants have been supporting the applications, and their comments indicate that they want a balanced approach, a consistent policy decision for Roosters and the Modern, and I agree with that. And I've heard concerns about the fact that restaurants are not involved in the Bar Watch system, or they're not covered by the Bar Watch program. And that's causing people to wonder if this might be a regulatory loophole that could lead down the road to bigger problems like we had some 10, 12 years ago. And I understand that. I heard those arguments put forward here in council, and today I was at an event and I got to discuss that with the city's social planner, Mr. John Horn, and he made a similar argument that the purpose of the policy of not having patron participation, entertainment, dancing, is to avoid food primary license that claims to want to have an event every so often turn into a regular music hall and regular events and changing in their character. I understand all that. But I still disagree. I'm not swayed. I think that before we take a look at radical steps like incorporating food primary licenses into the Bar Watch program, we should look at less formal approaches. There's a very specific fear about bar patrons who are being cut off and stopped through Bar Watch from going into any of the bars, migrating to the food primary licensees and going there to continue drinking through the evening. And this is where the regulatory hole would come in, where people could slip out of the Bar Watch system and go ahead and abuse alcohol and cause further problems because they're continuing to be served. I see two ways to address this problem. The first is staff education and training. It may or may not appear to be in the best interest of a restaurant owner to refuse service from time to time, but it is certainly in the best personal interest of bar management and bar staff to retain the right to refuse service. And if we enhance the education that comes with serving it right and emphasize and train people to recognize these problems and prevent drunks from coming in and abusing their food primary license, then I think we can address that problem by and large. The second way that we can do this is by having the bouncers in the bar who are operating the Bar Watch program share their information with the food primary licenses. The nature of Bar Watch, as any pub crawler would know, is that you go to the bar, you give them your photo ID, they scan your ID, and they keep the information temporarily and then dispose of it for privacy reasons later. But the RCMP, for instance, could go back and find out who was at which bars if there was a problem they wanted to investigate. Wouldn't it be possible, if perhaps legally difficult, to have an extension of that so that when an individual is barred from the bars, their information, say their photo, could be forwarded to the food primary licenses downtown so that the management and staff know ahead of time that there's a problem individual out there, and they can look for that and be warned. And through that system, we could prevent the problem of having people migrating from the Bar Watch covered program to non-covered facilities. And with that, I speak in favor of re-examining the right of the Roosters to have dancing, and I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, sir.
I want a clarification.
Oh, Councillor Kipp, go ahead.
Yeah, through to you, Mr. Horn, thank you. You mentioned about the Bar Watch program, and you mentioned that the people would then migrate over to the other food primaries. But the person that's kicked out of, not allowed in because of the Bar Watch program, can go to any other establishment that doesn't have it. And they can go to a restaurant now, have a drink with their food, things.
That's the concern as I understood it, yeah.
Yeah, so but the bad people wouldn't be migrating out of the bar at the end of the night because the ones that aren't allowed because of the Bar Watch program aren't allowed in the bar.
I see, they wouldn't be
leaving the bar because they're the ones that weren't allowed in because their ID, it tagged them as a biker, tagged them as a colorware or whatever.
Right.
So you understand that and they're keeping that, and there's certain people that are on the list that aren't allowed into those places.
I hadn't thought of that, but I would see it as the responsibility of the staff with their serving right certification to control the drinking. They wouldn't be in control of the other undesirable aspects, but it'd be their responsibility to control the drinking.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now this is reconsideration of an application for a permanent change to a food primary liquor license, Roosters Restaurant, 223 Commercial Street, considered at the Committee of the Whole meeting 2014, October 6th. And I think, Councillor Bessler, did you want to move the motion again? And,
Thank you, Your Worship. I would so move that council recommend that the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch approve an application to
Your
amend.
Worship.
We have to have a motion
I'm
to
sorry.
reconsider first, and then reconsider the motion.
Yeah, Council Bessler, you may want to move the reconsideration of the motion first, and then after we hear the vote, then we can move on to the original motion.
My apologies. I would so make the request for reconsideration of resolution related to liquor license application LA 108.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I see discussion, Councillor Brennan? No?
No, not on.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Then I would so move that. Hello? Thank you. Then I would so move that council recommend that the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch approve an application to amend the existing food primary liquor license for Roosters Restaurant, 223 Commercial Street, to include patron participation entertainment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, discussion, Councillor Brennan.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we were just doing the participation entertainment and not both these 1 and 2. But I hear that the motion ended with participation, and I'm happy with that.
Okay. Councillor Beswick.
I don't know what 2 is, but.
No, but did you have a comment on that?
Oh, just simply the participation entertainment.
Oh, okay. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, if I may. Is there a voluntary, can a food primary restaurant or bar voluntarily become part of the Bar Watch program?
Your Worship, we have not done that as yet. There's different licensing requirements. For their business license, it's much different. And there's definitely that council would want to consider, and this isn't a good example because it's in the downtown, but there'll be additional policing costs that go along with that if we start doing that outside of the downtown. Mm-hmm. And its time will come, and I think that the way the liquor licenses are going, we're probably looking at having to review the differences between the classes in the future, because there is an inequity and there is definitely similarities to what you can do in both establishments now, both liquor primary and food primary. But currently we don't allow them to be part of the Bar Watch that I know of.
Follow up, Your Worship. Mm-hmm. One of the concerns is that oftentimes people with food primary do not provide food in the after hours part of the evening. Is there a way of making that mandatory?
Go ahead.
Your Worship, up until, of course, this is regulated by the province. Up until recently, their interpretation was if you're in a food primary, you needed to purchase food in order to consume alcohol. They've recently changed that interpretation. So you can now go into a food primary establishment and a patron can order just a drink.
Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through some of the side conversation, I just wanted to confirm that at the October 6th meeting that we did, council did support the increase of hours of late night liquor service. It was just the patron participation that didn't go through. That's correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So just in regards to the reconsideration motion, as I said last time, within the report we received from staff, it said that the city's liquor control strategy recommends that council endorse restaurants' request for patron participation entertainment, but only in cases where the individual restaurant provides in writing an outline of the types of entertainment planned and the assurance that food service will remain the primary function. And as I mentioned last time, the applicant's letter of assurance is included, and that was attachment C. So I will be supporting the reconsideration of this motion.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to staff. Can I get a definition beyond dancing as to what entails patron participation?
Mr. Lindsay?
Your Worship, my understanding is it could include other things like karaoke, for example. that involves the audience.
How about music trivia?
I'm sorry, I don't believe so, Your Worship, but I'm probably not the authority to answer that question. I could report back to council if that information was important.
How about somebody coming up from the audience and picking up a microphone where there is a singer? So there's a singer singing. Somebody else comes up and picks up a second microphone.
Your Worship, I guess I'd put that into the same category as karaoke. My understanding is that would require a patron participation designation on the license.
So then it's much broader than just dancing.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the new interpretation means that an individual can go to a food primary at any time and just have alcohol, not be served food. So I think that's important, because that was certainly my concern, was that things would change after midnight and it would turn into just a liquor primary, but really it acts as liquor primary all the time. So that, I guess I can knock off my list of objections. I understand that the proprietor has to have a chef or a cook on duty until 1, so food has to be available till 1. It doesn't stop at midnight, but that the entertainment does stop at midnight. That can't go beyond that. So with those clarifications, I guess the majority of my objections have been met. I do have concerns, though, that we conceivably have that alley with 3 what could be run almost as liquor primary. The Old City Station, I guess, the Modern, and Roosters, all at the same time, all operating until 1 o'clock, all have letting patrons out at the same time who may or may not have overconsumed. We hope not, and I think with a responsible establishment that won't happen. But then on the other side of the street, you've got where the Palace is, that little road. I mean,
Skinner Street.
Yeah, you've got nightclubs there and a pub, and so I certainly have apprehensions about those that number of establishments letting out at the same time, not having to eat while you're in the establishment. It's worrisome, and it does kind of fly in the face of the earlier recommendations that we had around the turn of into the 2000s. So it's problematic. I think it is, but if we have responsible owners, and I understand that the provinces and the police actually watch these things quite closely to make sure that they are compliant, and if they're not compliant, that there are penalties. So with that, I will vote in favor of it.
You know, I think there might be some advantages in having them in the same general area as well from an enforcement standpoint, where the police, instead of having to drive across town or several blocks, but I know the police would prefer to have it staggered every half hour or something of that nature. But you know, what you allow for one, you have to allow for all. It's, you know, in the interest of
Well,
fairness.
I think it's number of hours. So yes, you might want to say it can be open this number of hours. It doesn't have to be the same hours.
Right. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I concur with all the apprehensions that Councillor Brennan has expressed. I feel a bit like someone who sits in the Senate might feel, where we're in a place of sober second thoughts with emphasis on sobriety. But in any case, I'll be supporting it because I think I can also count the votes from last time, and the next motion that is coming will have to be on the same level playing field in this one, so I'll be supporting this.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Greaves opposed, balance of council in favor. The motion passes. And now we'll deal with item E, which is the liquor license application LA 109, permanent change to a food primary liquor license, the Modern Cafe, 221 Commercial Street. And the motion is before you. Okay. And is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and
Yeah,
seconded.
Your Worship, there's a delegation first.
Oh. Oh, come on, Mike, don't, why?
For clarification purposes, Council just passed the second item, which is to allow for dancing at the Roosters. Yep. I support the Modern Cafe. It's been here in Nanaimo for as long as me and my family have, and certainly I expect that they'll be granted a consistent policy with the Roosters, and that's all good, because they want to compete, and that's the way the system works.
There's no camera.
The only other thing that I'll say is that dancing or other activities doesn't have to necessarily mean what we think it means. Like typically in our culture, dancing does mean drunken dancing to a rock band, but it can mean all sorts of things. There's bars teaching salsa and tango in downtown Nanaimo now, and with a long-term view, if we work with our culture and advance our culture, then we don't have to just think of dancing as grinding to rock and roll music. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You're dancing around the issue, Mike.
I move the recommendation.
Okay, and moved and seconded. Councillor Bessick, did you want to comment on it?
Yes, please. I'm making the assumption that's 1 and 2.
1 and 2, you moved?
And we certainly don't need to play a video of Footloose. But I think it would be important that we recognize the century that we're in. And the two properties have made significant investments in their establishments, and it would be wonderful if we could see them survive and prosper. I heard earlier in our strategic plan about culture and vibrance. Vibrance. Well, then let's try to work toward having that take place in our city, and I'm sure that the owners of those establishments wish not to have their investments diminished by permitting acts of untoward indecency throughout the course of their operating hours. Thank you.
So vibrant dancing only. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Greaves opposed. Balance of council in favor. The motion passes. Dealing with item F, unresolved building deficiencies, notice on title, section 5.7. It's requested that council herein and wishing to speak with respect to the unresolved building deficiencies for the properties listed below, the staff recommendation motion that council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under section 5.7 of the Community Charter. The first property is 212 Bird Sanctuary Drive. Is there anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 212 Bird Sanctuary Drive? The second property is 1921, 1921 Quadra Avenue. Anyone in attendance tonight that would like to speak to matters related to 1921 Quadra Avenue? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into community service, 9A, Nanaimo Emergency Program Bylaw, 2014, number 7202. Purpose is to provide council with information on the replacement of the city's existing emergency program bylaw, number 4711, with a new emergency program bylaw. Would somebody like to move that one? Moved and seconded? Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Oh, what's that? Oh, you're on again. Okay, sorry. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Personally, I have a problem supporting this bylaw. When I look in the local authority guidelines from Emergency Management BC, It brings about a number of recommendations, and I understand in the report that we sent the information off to the BC government, EMBC, and got a review of it, and then sent it off to our lawyer, and got it reviewed, and then came back with it. My big concern is, first off, when you look at emergency management training manuals and emergency management standards, they typically have an emergency executive committee. And most communities in BC are doing it that way. And that would be the emergency executive committee is a subcommittee of the local council, and the committee consists of usually the mayor and or a council representative, regional district chairs sometimes, the chief administrative officer, and the emergency program coordinator. We've seemingly eliminated that step, and we've just gone into a planning committee. Can staff advise me why we chose to do it that way? Or were you guys listening?
Certainly, just wanted clarification. So are you referring to the formation of the policy committee, which gives direction in this regard?
Executive committee under an ICS BCERMS models. There's a typical executive committee. I sent you the documentation today earlier.
Yes.
So can I ask why we chose not to have an executive committee and then emergency planning committee?
Well, the executive committee in the Nanaimo Emergency Response Guide, we detail the committee, the policy group, and that's also in the Nanaimo Emergency Program Guide. So what this bylaw is doing is establishing the framework, and then the committees and the subcommittees are detailed in the other documents in our operational documents. So in here, it does have an executive, or it does have a committee in the bylaw, and if you'll just give me a second, the Emergency Planning Committee, which consists of the emergency programmer, the Director of Social and Protective Services, the RCMP detachment representative, and the fire chief, and then additional heads of functional city departments and or designates, and such other members that the local authority may determine. And then in our emergency response guide, that's where it outlines the policy group, and then in our Nanaimo emergency program guidelines, that's where we get into the different committees, the executive committee of which you're speaking, I think, for updates and things such as that.
Well, actually, it usually sets the budget and sets the parameters for it. And it's interesting that you say, when you refer to those two other documents, it's interesting that for me, this bylaw is not new. This is not an updated bylaw. It's an old bylaw still. I don't know when it came from or why it is, but it says Emergency Planning Committee. This, I'm talking about the Executive Committee. There is no political oversight in our emergency program. And every other bylaw that I've seen written has somewhere, whether the mayor once a year signs off and gives delegation authority, but they meet once a year to give that delegated authority. We don't have that in our bylaw. And I'm wondering why we removed. But the answer I'm getting is that we have it in other places and we've established, but that's just the planning committee you've established, not an executive committee.
The executive committee as well, and I think it's in our Nanaimo Emergency Program Guide.
Yeah,
and that is where we
did that guide.
Exactly.
I know it's in there.
So that's where we update mayor on an annual basis of the things that have gone on for the emergency program throughout the year. Now this, what we've done, this bylaw is we took the old bylaw and we made amendments as in the report to the organizational structure, so the changes in the organizational structure that's happened. And then through the lawyer, he's removed some of those things that they've seen, as we said, and it's been vetted through EMBC as well. So I understand what you're saying, but I guess at this point, it's in our guide.
You've chosen just to eliminate that part as a staff.
Once again, we're not eliminating it. That process is still in place, and we certainly, in an emergency situation, would receive guidance from the policy committee.
But the other side of it, then, the ICS policy committee typically doesn't have staff people in the policy. It's the elected officials that are policy group, and we've changed that in our guide too.
No, it's policy group is still mayor and council, and then it's informed and advised through our city manager.
If I can, Your Worship, in our policy guide, that's the reason I asked when we were doing the exercises for Collery Dam 2 years ago, and that's the same guide, and that policy group does not exist the way it is written in the provincial mandate and bylaws. And our bylaws cannot differ or cannot change the accountability of the provincial mandate. Am I correct? We have to, ours is subservient to the provincial mandate.
You heard that?
Yeah, maybe what we can do is I can certainly look into it, but again, this was reviewed by the province, so.
Could we have some, could I see what they changed and then what we took out? I'd like to see that, if I could. Thank you.
Mr. Swaby, do you have a comment or no? Okay.
Well, if I can have a follow-up? Yep. One of the reasons I'm concerned with this is I've asked for 6 years for a protective services committee that has oversight into 3 of our most expensive departments, Public Works, Fire, and Police. 6 years. Now we have a protective services department, but still no political oversight. And if you reviewed the guidelines under the provincial mandates, there's an executive committee in there.
Mr. Seward?
And Your Worship, it's certainly our intention and Council's direction is to have a protective service committee, and the hope was to actually achieve that this fall, but we haven't been able to because of the committee structure, the challenge of getting committees together. So certainly as the new council comes in, that's one of the first things, and we as the protective services staff really look forward to that and to receive that direction.
But Your Worship, just to clarify, council has oversight over everything that goes on in the organization. And if we do set up a protective services committee, if council wants to do that, it would be on a policy level. It wouldn't be in the operations, which I think is substantially different than maybe is being portrayed.
Oh, excuse me. I can respond to that. No, the Protective Services Committee would, in fact, overview policy, but it would derive the policy and send that policy and direct the operation via that policy. Currently, we don't get involved in policy.
Your Worship, I would beg to differ that council sets all the policies in the organization that deal with the direction we're going and the budget that we expend on emergency services.
Got 3 days to look at this. You
Councillor
haven't said anything.
Thank you, Your Worship. For my part, I'm satisfied with the report, so I'm looking forward to you calling the question so that we can receive this information.
Okay, because I was going to check what we maybe got a little ahead of ourselves because we're not dealing with the bylaw now. We're actually dealing with the receive the information.
That's correct, Your Worship, and it's been moved and seconded.
Yep, so let's pass that or not, as the case is. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we move into the bylaw, and the motion that Nanaimo Emergency Program Bylaw 2014 number 7202 to establish a comprehensive management program to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergency and disaster past first reading. Would anyone like to move that?
So moved, Your Worship.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Bestwick opposed. Councillor Kipp opposed. And balanced council in favor. The motion passes. And secondly, that the motion that Nanaimo Emergency Program Bylaw 2014 number 7202 pass second reading. Move and seconded. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp. Councillor Bestwick opposed. Balanced council in favor. The motion. Sorry? Second motion, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Yeah, Councillor Kipp opposed. Yeah, and Councillor Bestwick opposed. The balanced councillor in favor. The motion passes. And we're moving into Regional Emergency Management Agreement. Purpose to provide council with background on the Regional Emergency Management Agreement and obtain council approval to renew the agreement. And the staff recommendation is the motion that council approve the updated multi-jurisdiction emergency management agreement.
The updated multi-jurisdictional emergency management agreement.
Okay, is there a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, I'd like a question through the staff. When we have emergency coordination center, multi-jurisdictional level 3 event that includes the regional districts around us, I notice in one of our laws, or one of your rules there, it says that the person who will be the director will be someone from the organization as approved on, or someone with the expertise. Could you explain that to me? And that, I think, differs a little bit from our bylaw that says for Nanaimo, our Nanaimo people are directly in charge, but then in the agreement, this one, which I worked on this agreement a long time ago, is it's a bit different language now than just anybody filling in from any of those partners as an EOC director, or as an ops section chief, or any of that. It used to be just people without just vests and go at it from any jurisdiction. That's changed now?
The reason that there's that change in wording, in the original agreement, it was the RDN or the RDN CAO, or would be essentially the director of a regional EOC. And what was recognized through consultation with the group, so all these partners got together, was that setting up a regional EOC may not necessarily have an impact to something within the regional district of Nanaimo, but we would require all those parties to come together. So what that did is, if it was something that was, say, impacting the city of Nanaimo but had a minimal impact to the regional district, the, I guess, point of origin or the area of origin that was more impacted would then assume that EOC director position. So when we say, therefore, having more experience or more impact, they would become the EOC director, and if all else fails, then it would go to the regional district. And what we did that for, what the recommendation to do that was for us to be able to also maintain some autonomy through the agreement. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what it is.
See, to me, that wouldn't be autonomy if it couldn't be just anyone. Autonomy when any person capable of being a director in other municipalities. And the whole idea of this agreement was to have massive redundancy from community to community. If you say we have 76 people that are EOC trained, and we need 3 shifts or 4 shifts, because people can only work so many days and we have a massive event, the whole idea was to have this mutual aid in place and common training and everybody training together all the time, year after year, all the jurisdictions, so that they would be a finely tuned machine. But now I see that we're concerned with someone from another jurisdiction spending our money. I understand that. We don't want to give the authority to somebody from Coombs to be our director. But it does concern me that we're limiting. This agreement is supposed to open up and make everybody available under this agreement to work in any jurisdiction under any role. But it's changed.
It still does do that, and if you look at the wording, let me just refer to it here. If you just give me a second. It's upon agreement of all the parties involved, so it still does allow that. And then there's also the opportunity, in addition to the mutual aid, we still have the ability to go through the provincial government to garner resources to operate in EOCs, following our BCERMs and our EOC protocols.
Excuse me, the Auditor General's report in March 2014 said EMBC is not capable. And that's what the report said. They do not have the resources and they're not capable. So we can't depend on them. We have to depend on our neighbors. And that's what this agreement's about. The province and them are separate to this. This is us, our island communities.
Your Worship, I think what Ms. Lindsay...
Frustrating. I only had 3 days. I got this 3 days ago. Never had any information about it before. So it's been tough all weekend. Because this is kind of, I'm qualified on this.
Okay. Mr. Swaby, go ahead.
I hope that Councillor Kipp got the answer, though. If the province doesn't have the resources, the first answer was that it does allow for us to agree on anyone within the mutual aid to actually take over as the director.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp opposed? Balanced council in favor. The motion passes. Moving into bylaws with no accompanying report. Item Is there a seconder? Second. Discussion? Councillor Kipp.
No.
Oh, sorry, from before. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Brennan, Councillor Kipp opposed. Balanced council in favor. The motion passes.
And I move that Development Services Department fees and charges amendment bylaw 2014 under 7016.06 to amend Schedule A land title cost recovery be adopted.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There's no correspondence. There's no council appointments, except on the... we're not going to rise and report at this point, so that notice of motion, none. And so we go right into question period.
Another interest I have is in the report that I've read, there was no mention of a budget. So are you on a shoestring? Because I understand when I was around, Karen was under the fire chief, and the fire chief had the budget, but now I see that she's under Toby Seward now, and I'd like to know what kind of budget that they have to run their operation, and what type of equipment do they have in running their operation. Okay? That's one question. The other question was, I didn't notice in here, other than the mayor is the go-to person in this process. Is that still correct?
My understanding it is, Mr. Seward.
Okay, so the mayor's not in town. Who's the next one involved? If he hasn't got, if the delegate, they're at the convention. Okay, so there's none of them in town. Who takes over the responsibility?
It's very rare when all of us go to a convention. It happens, but extremely rare. There's usually somebody stays behind that could be delegated.
Well, I just wanted to enlighten you, Mr. Chairman. Previously, under the emergency program, the mayor was in charge. Then there was a fight between the fire chief and the chief of police. And the story was that the chief of police says they'll go down and pick the mayor up, bring him back, and put him in the cell while he has the responsibility of doing it. So, as I say, that was the life
well, I
previous.
can't see that I could support that.
As I say, Mr. Chairman, this is it. But I think that I support the department, but I think that we need to have a budget for them. And then also, because they're working with other organizations not under the city employment, and that they utilize their equipment and this, that, and the other thing, okay? So there needs to be some financial whereabouts to buy some of the needed equipment that's there. So I would just like to see the budget and go from there. Thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you. Pick it up.
Ron Boland, 3165 King Richard Drive.
That's true.
I am trying to get some clarification on the question that Mr. Sherry raised earlier with you. In following what happened here regarding procedure, I was unable to follow. So let me be simple-minded about this. As I understand it, the issues that he raised were, one, that we have a procedure bylaw, and that the overall effect of that is to reflect the relationship between council and staff in general operations, which responsibilities belong to council and which to staff. At the same time, he pointed out that there is a bylaw regarding parks and their use, and that use does not include commercial ventures without follow-up from council. Therefore, I feel that the question is, by what authority did staff begin to negotiate with a private company on the use of a park without your pre-approval? Or where is that pre-approval if it was given?
Mrs. Swaby, do you want
But, Your Worship, you can imagine that that would mean that staff shouldn't talk to any developers at all about any rezonings because they're all bylaws. It has to start somewhere. So it starts with staff, and we bring it to council as the decision makers, and you make a decision.
When discussion starts, it comes to council and gets approval to proceed rather than proceeding without that authority, in my estimation. I leave it to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Go, Skip.
Through the staff on that, is there a level that would trigger staff to give council an update on a bylaw? Is staff ever considered, like, I guess, so that's why I said that the AAP or the going to referendum, the AAP is used where there might not be that much community impact, I believe. That's what it was aimed at, where we didn't think it was that big of an issue. But a big issue would head to referendum. So is there the same type of interpretation, like when you're talking $100 million hotel or whatever, is that, or a 36-story hotel, is that a big enough thing to come to council with? Because I guess one of the concerns I had, I read about the Hilton and some of the improvements in the newspaper on the 40,000. That's the first I had heard that we were really negotiating with that hotel. So can staff, there isn't really a, or would you require something from?
Your Worship, council has to be the adjudicator of the scale in which they believe the impact is great, because some may weigh that the Hilton's application is a very minor encroachment into the park. Others may say that zero encroachment is their tolerance, so it's up to council. This application actually was brought to council's attention quite early, I think before it was an application, and I believe the applicant actually had all of council to open houses, explain what they were going to do, and granted, to the extent to which they're going to use the park probably wasn't very clear, but they certainly were showing that they were using it. And the first step in the process when it comes for rezoning is when council could decide, no, we're not interested at all, go away and don't consider this. But at this point, here we are, and we'll be bringing forward something that talks about what the extent of the use of the park, what the value of the use of the park, and what the implications for use are for council to consider putting forward to the electorate.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, we stand adjourned.